4DAD411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
WOKB, Winter Garden, Orlando.
Welcome to Real Family Talk with your host, Jay Real, where we talk about real issues facing us today. Enjoy the show. Real Family Talk. Hello. Welcome to another week of Real Family Talk. This is your host, Jay Real. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday evening. As always, it's Tuesday, so you know I'm having an excellent time. I'm really excited tonight. We got a guest in the house tonight, so I'm really excited about that. Before we get to our guest, though, we'll go ahead and introduce some of our regulars that join us every week here. Miss Monica is in the building. How you doing, Miss Monica?
Doing good. How you doing, Jay Real?
I'm doing all right. Miss McCray is also in the building as well.
Hey.
How you doing tonight, Miss McCray?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight? Excited as usual?
As always. Okay. And then, as usual, Mr. Micah King is in the building. How you doing, Mr. Micah King?
I'm doing great. All right.
All right. And our guest, like I said, we have a guest in the evening. She is running for the Florida House, District 46. Miss Rosalind Johnson is in the building tonight. How you doing, Miss Johnson?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. So tonight we're going to talk to Miss Johnson, find out a little bit more about her and the platform that she's trying to present to District 46. Okay, so we'll get to her in just a moment. So please, I'm sure she's going to take some calls, I'm sure. That's right, Miss Johnson, you're going to take some calls from the listeners, right?
Yes.
So remember, the number here is 407-894-1680, 407-894-1680. But real quick, just a couple quick things before we get to Miss Johnson here. First off, shout out to the Orlando Magic. We got a new GM a couple months back now. Now we officially have a head coach. So his name is Jock Vaughn. So finally we're moving forward, at least as far as the organization is concerned. Now if we can figure out what's going on with these players, well, in particular one player, Dwight Howard, we can move forward and kind of get ready for training camp. And then, of course, the start of the season. Yeah, we still got a couple more months. But congratulations to the Magic for finally finding their coach. It would seem we're in the rebuilding mode, and so they went for a young guy, Jock Vaughn. He's been in the league, I think he spent 12 to 13 years in the league. So he's got a lot of experience within the league, and then he's, as they tout him for being under some great leaders as far as coaches that he's been under. As well, Greg Popovich, Jerry Sloan, two men that I think at some point, I don't think they're in the Hall of Fame yet for coaching because they're still coaching, but I'm sure one day they will be there. So he's, got some good tutelage. Hopefully he brings some great energy, enthusiasm to some of these young players. And we'll see what happens next year. Hopefully moving forward, we'll be on the right direction. I know Mr. Micah King got something to say about that, though. I guess he's a little occupied right now. That's okay. Ms. McCray, you got anything you want to say about the new head coach?
Bless his heart. That's all I have to say. He's walking into something that it's bigger than him. I hope that he has what it takes to withstand all the pressure that's about to be handed to him. Especially if this trade goes through and Dwight leaves, then what? He's going to be blamed for the season not going well like we want it to go. So bless his heart. I wish him luck. Welcome to Orlando, and I hope to get some game tickets if you're listening. Hey.
All right. So we do have a new coach. Like I said, congratulations to the Magic there. All right, we'll go ahead and jump right into to talking to Ms. Johnson here. So we're going to start, Ms. Johnson. I wanted to allow you to introduce yourself to the people, let them know your platform and what you're about.
Well, as you stated, my name is Rosalind Johnson. I am running in District 46 for state representative. And the reason I am running is I am running for that single mother who goes to school full time and works to try to take care of their kids And, just because they make $5 more, they may lose their benefits. And so now I'm running for that person. I'm running for the elderly person who has to make the decision on whether or not to pay their light bill or to get their medication. I'm running for that small business owner who is struggling week after week to meet payroll and just to keep their doors open, only to find out that the same companies are getting these contracts over and over and over again. My platform is basically empowerment of the community, making sure that there's community outreach, there's neighborhood revitalization. I want to make sure that the community has a strong political and social strength. Education. Education is a big part of why I'm running. We need to make sure that our schools have adequate resources. We need to make sure that our teachers are taken care of. We also need to make sure that we have vocational training programs, apprenticeship programs, and things like that for some of our youth who are graduating from high school, because everyone's not going to go to college. So we want to make sure that they're prepared, to enter the workforce when they graduate. And another big thing is job creation, economic development. Everybody's talking about that, and that is a major, major issue. And we have to make sure that, we beautify our neighborhoods. We have to make sure that we have a skilled and educated workforce if we want to be able to bring businesses to the community. And with that being said, another major thing that I want to work on is making sure that people that have made mistakes in their life, people who've been convicted of crimes, are streamlining that process so that they can get their rights restored or get their records sealed, to be able to find a job and take care of their family.
All right. Definitely a lot of things that we need to be concerned about within the community. One of the other things I kind of wanted to do, because a lot of people, they hear politicians speak and they hear, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Kind of give the people an idea of as far as if you are elected, what's going to be your job, if you will. So obviously we know you're going to have to go to Tallahassee at some point. Are you there all year long? Are you back in District 46 at all? I mean, how does that process work?
Well, you're generally, during a legislative session, it's usually about 60 to 90 days where you would be, in Tallahassee, unless there are special sessions called or things like that. Aside from that, there's an office that you would run within the district where you would be able to communicate with the constituents. You would do, at least what I would do is make sure that there are modes of communication in place to make sure that the community knows everything that's going on. You know about what bills are coming up. You know about what contracts are coming through. It's there are a lot of politicians do, and I also want to stress the fact that I am not a politician. I am running because I'm about people and not politics, and this is something that's personal for me. I have struggled all my life, and I'm tired of seeing people struggle, and I feel that something needs to be done. Someone needs to represent the community that can make sure that things actually trickle back down to the district. And so a big part of what I want to do is make sure that there are modes of communication in place. Social media, Facebook and Twitter, radio, because everybody's not going to check the mail if they get a newsletter. For the elderly community, a newsletter and things like that may work because they're, you generally not on the computers and things like that. But we need to make sure that we're engaging the younger voters, the 18 to 35 population who is the hardest to get out to actually vote. And so we also want to make sure that they're informed and they know what's going on.
All right. Ladies, remember, you can give us a call, 407-894-1680, 407-894-1680 to talk with candidate for Florida House District 46, Rosalind Johnson. Ladies, you have some questions for Ms. Johnson tonight?
I do have a question. I'm kind of talking a little bit about after that session, when you are in legislation making those decisions, voting for those particular bills. I think a lot of times what a lot of people get concerned with when it comes to politics is that once they're voted in, they tend to just stay there and then there's no accountability. So they never come back and stay connected with the community. What kind of ways do you feel, or how would you plan to stay connected to the community so that the community would be able to tell you about certain issues that are occurring or certain concerns that they have while you're in legislation?
That's a very easy question for me. Past performance, I think, is the best indicator of future performance. And I am involved and entrenched in the community now through my organization. And so it's just going to be second nature for me to make sure that the constituents are able to reach me, to make sure that I have an open door policy at my office so that, you don't have to fight just to be able to get in, to say what it is that you have to say.
Okay. How are you say you're not a politician. How are you going to fight against that machine that's already running that is politics? What are you going to do different to not get sucked into that game? I think it's just my personality. I'm a very strong-willed person. I'm not easily persuaded. I'm the type of person that, I stand firm on what I believe in, and that won't change. Anybody that knows me, knows I'm the same Rosalind with every single person that I encounter. And as far as being able to fight, and argue with those Republicans up there, being an attorney definitely gives me upper hand on that. Okay, all right, because it's coming.
Right.
It's an ugly thing. This politics.
Mm-hmm. Very.
J. Real looking at me like it's crazy. He knows it's ugly.
It can be very ugly, especially when you're going into a Florida Congress which is dominated by Republicans. I don't quite know. Do you know the numbers right now, or what they were in the last session? I'm not really sure. I just know that
I don't know the exact. I believe it's about 80 or 81 to 39 or something like that. I believe is the number.
81 to 39.
81 to 39.
So
Democrats 39.
You're outnumbered. There's twice as many Republicans there, basically, compared to Democrats. And so you say your background as an attorney is going to allow you to kind of hold your ground. What are some of the things that you think you will be able to kind of build a bridge with and help bring back to the community with a Republican, quote unquote, we'll call it a Republican-minded individual?
I think I'm going to be honest with you. I think it would be very, very hard to get a whole lot done in Tallahassee. And that's why I think it's going to involve a lot of building within the community and partnerships and things like that, because it's really going to be a fight to get budget appropriations and things like that, to expand on them that aren't already in place to be able to come back to the district. And the first thing I think that would have to be done was definitely looking at some of these corporate tax loopholes and things like that to see if we can get some of that money back to education and money back to some of the programs back in the community. But I do really believe that it's going to take a strong community base and partnering with local businesses, maybe getting grants, brought into the district to be able to fund some of the programs that we need to have in place. And I don't think a lot of that is going to be able to come from Tallahassee. I'm definitely the type of person that, would fight for it. But, I'm just being realistic. A lot of people run for office and they give you all these promises that they know that they can't keep. And that I'm not that type of person. But I know that, I can go up there and fight, and try to get back what we need here in District 46.
All right. 407-894-1680. 407-894-1680. Again, we're talking with candidate for Florida House District 46, Rosalind Johnson. Feel free to give us a call if you have some questions out there, family, for Ms. Johnson, 407-894-1680. Now, you talk a lot about building within the community. Let's be honest, in the community, especially in the Black community, it's very, very difficult to get, let's say, quite a number of Black individuals to support anything beyond, not a God. They'll support God, but they will go to church. But beyond going to, church, what are some of the things that you think you can do to kind of really energize people so that we can build a community base where we can bring up the community through our own efforts as opposed to something that's happening in Tallahassee?
Providing incentives, I think, would be a way to get some things done. I have an organization here in Orlando, And I've really learned how to build partnerships and things like that. Having a nonprofit organization, you have to try to, partner with different organizations in order to get things done. I mean, because everything takes money. And so you have to try to partner with different organizations to, try to get things done. And in order to get, basically, are you asking how to get people to participate in things, to show up?
Correct. Correct.
It may take something like, providing an incentive. You do whatever you can to get them in the room, and then once you get them there, make sure you get that information out. I do agree that it is hard to try to get people to participate, but at the same time, it's something that has to be done, because there are people that actually want to participate. They're educated and informed and want to know what's going on, and so we have to make sure that we're targeting both groups.
Okay. What have you seen so far, now that you've been campaigning and it's dragging on? What have you seen so far from the community? How are your feelings on how things are going?
I think it's going well. I'm actually getting a really positive response. It's been difficult, getting my name out there, getting people, to know who I am. A few of the other candidates have some name recognition. So it has been kind of, difficult in that respect. But, with the people that I've come in contact with, it's definitely been positive. I've been getting a lot of positive feedback. People are really excited that there's a new face, a new, person involved. And a lot of people, there are quite a few people that know me from our organization. We feed about 400 people a month, through my food pantry. And so a lot of those people, I'm not the kind of person that is, hey, look at me. So a lot of the stuff that I've done, people don't know that it was me that did it. They know they may know the organization, or they may know of the event, but they didn't know that I was the person that was behind it, because I never kind of, threw myself out there like that, because that's not why I do it. I do it to genuinely help people. And so, that's been the hardest part. But aside from that, I've been getting really great responses. Also not having been involved in politics, you don't realize how dirty it really is, until you get involved.
Right.
Exactly. This is why I'm staying out of politics. But okay, 407-894-1680, 407-894-1680. That's the number. Again, we're talking with Rosalind Johnson, candidate, Florida House District 46, 407-894-1680. Some of the initiatives you talked about was education. With everything that's going on with the FCAT, recently they set a new set of standards. The test came back. A lot of the kids didn't meet the new standards, so they took the standards back a little bit so that more kids would meet the standard. The grades came out in the last month here. Again, there were harder standards for the grades. They pushed that back so that more schools would get better grades as well. What are some of the things that you want to or think can be introduced to kind of help with education in Florida, and then, of course, help those within District 46 as well?
First and foremost, I think that the FCAT is absolutely ridiculous. It is very arbitrary. It's not an adequate assessment, of the students. And, definitely scrapping the FCAT would be, one of the things that I would want to work on. Perfect example, my daughter, my 12-year-old, she has always gotten straight A's, always gotten 5s on the FCAT. And I actually took her in today because they were testing her for the gifted program, and she was like, "Oh, the FCAT scores are here," and so she started talking to me about what she went through at the time when she was actually taking the FCAT this time. And she said that there was, a mix-up with the classroom, so she didn't get to take it on Tuesday like she was supposed to. She had to take it on Thursday with a whole nother group of students. That while she was taking it, she was halfway through, the computer crashed. The next day, she had to start all over again, take the whole thing over.
What?
And so all these different variables are going on. And she ended up getting a 4 this year, which, is still a very high score. But when you look at all the different things that took place, and especially if you don't have a student that's that strong academically, right, it's definitely going to make a difference in the score. Mm-hmm. And so, I do believe that there needs to be some type of assessment of our students. But I just don't think the FCAT, is that test. I don't think the FCAT is something that should determine whether or not a child graduates.
Right.
You have SATs, you have other standardized tests for kids that, want to go to college to be able to assess their level of ability. But even, with the FCAT, a lot of kids still end up going to college having to take remedial classes, when they first get there. So I don't think it's, something that we need.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly that those tests, I mean, if you have a student who's making a 4.0 and then they get held back or they can't graduate because of a test, and by 1 point, 1 or 2 points, I hate hearing those stories where kids have to do the whole test all over again or whatever portion they missed. So I agree we do need an assessment, but this test shouldn't have so much weight on these people, their futures.
Aside from that, our kids are missing a lot of other stuff that they need to be taught because the teachers spend so much time teaching the test that they cannot have control of their classrooms. And I think it's very important that teachers are able to have control of their classroom. And, as long as they're meeting those benchmarks and things like that, they should be able to do what they want, to be able to teach our kids. I remember, going to school where you had, teacher that's been there 20 years, and if you didn't pass that class, you're going to get in trouble. But you really learned a lot. I mean, you got a lot of life experience as well as, academic experience. And we're losing a lot of that, because of things like the FCAT.
Definitely. And I think, like you said, as a former OCPS teacher myself, we did spend probably leading up to the FCAT, you spent those 3 to 4 months, or about maybe 2 to 3 months prior to it, focused on, or at least some part of your lesson did have to do with the FCAT, just to make sure that they were going to be ready for the type of information that they were going to be presented on the FCAT, and even going into the high school levels, which to my knowledge, this hasn't been fixed. But because it was standardized to take it, I believe it was 10th grade, there were students taking science exams on information that they hadn't even learned yet. There's biology on those tests, chemistry on those tests, and a lot of times in 10th grade, unless you are considered one of the brighter students, you're not even taking a biology or chemistry class until maybe junior year, senior year, if at all, depending on the level of student you were. So they're definitely not the best way to assess students. One of the ideas that they have is doing the end of the year exams. What do you think about that?
I think it could go both ways because, at some point they're going to be teaching to the test. I mean, it's still going to get, every classroom is not going to be at the same point. So, something may happen. There may be an assembly or something one day. And so now for, that whole day, that's a whole, hour, 2 hours or whatever that the kids missed that the teacher has to kind of, go back and make up. And so then if it gets to a point where everybody has to take this test at the same time, one class may not have gotten to a certain area or something like that. So I think it may end up causing problems. Another thing with the FCAT that a lot of people aren't talking about is the stigma and the peer pressure involved with it. My 17-year-old daughter was telling me that at her school, and I don't know if they do this at all the high schools, but at her school that if you fail the FCAT or you don't score high enough, I don't know if it's considered, failing. If you don't score high enough, that your lunch hour, instead of getting like the full hour lunch, you're placed in like some type of remedial or FCAT tutoring class. So everybody knows who didn't pass because they don't get to go to lunch with everybody else. They're kind of segregated, so to speak. And so then it gets to where, other kids are cruel, and so other kids are teasing them and so that's another thing I think that's involved with these, standardized tests because kids are getting singled out, and it gets to a point where our students are being labeled and, it's not a good thing.
That's not cool.
Well, yeah, and included in that, in middle school, what they do, if you don't get certain scores on the FCAT, and in high school they do this too, and rather than having an elective, you'll take like an extra reading class. And so again, you can say everybody knows who didn't pass or get a certain score on the FCAT because you won't have PE or art or anything. You'll have reading. Right. As opposed to having that regular elective.
Well, that's
so
not
you even
as
see
bad.
it's
though,
not as
they
bad.
Can't see the schedule, but they know who's not out on the courtyard at lunchtime.
Exactly. Yeah, the FCAT definitely needs to be tweaked. That's for sure. What do you think about charter schools? How do you think those affect public education?
I am not. Well, I gotta make sure I phrase this correctly. I'm not a proponent of charter schools in the traditional sense. What that means is there are charter schools out there for kids who've been expelled, alternative schools. I think those are wonderful things to have in place because if a child gets expelled, they need to be able to have access to an education. And so I think that's definitely a good thing. The traditional charter schools, I feel like, it's turned into a business. They don't have the same standards as regular public schools. They don't have to take the FCAT. They don't have the same rules and regulations for, like the inspections and different things like that. Mm-hmm. And I just think that if they're going to exist, they need to have the exact same standards that our public schools have. But I don't think that is something that we need because, we have a lot of schools with low enrollment and things like that. We're losing money from the budget for our public schools and money is going to charter schools. And then you have quite a few that, open up, they stay open 2 years, then they close down. Then those students have to go back to regular school. And I've heard Ms. Thompson talk about this, Rep. Thompson talk about it quite a bit, that the kids have to go back. And now the teachers at the public school is left trying to catch these kids back up to where they need to be. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a problem. I do think that we should be able to have them as far as alternative schools are concerned. There's some schools like Life Skills, and things like that. And I think those are definitely schools that we need to have. But traditional charter schools, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. I tell you what, I'm actually I'm a fan of charter schools, Ms. Mm-hmm. Johnson, mm-hmm. and I tell you why. I think, especially when it comes to our kids, the public school system, as in general, when you have kids that come from backgrounds that will say present a challenge to being able to properly learn. Mm-hmm. Does that mean every charter school is a good school? No, you're probably right. There's probably tons of them that are just collecting checks. Mm-hmm. But I think they could serve a purpose if they sought for a niche market and then focused on those niche markets. I think of a gentleman in Connecticut he is in, and he has a charter school, and he works with, like I said, at-risk kids whose backgrounds tend to not lead to moving into higher education, and he does a very good job because he is focused on those students, because his goals, sort of like you do with your organization probably, is focused on making sure those people who quote unquote don't have a chance have a chance. And so when you serve those niche markets, and if you have a staff that's dedicated to making sure those kids can succeed, I think a charter school can be a great idea, because those kids tend to get lost in public school education because, like I said, I worked at these schools. You get your labels. With what public school does, they label you, mm-hmm. and really once you have a particular label, warranted or not, you're really treated differently. You're going to be sent in a different path when you get to high school. You're not going to graduate with a regular diploma. You're going to graduate it with a certificate. Even in middle school, you get a certain label, and you're going to be put in a certain class where the teacher's going to expect you to do stuff, but they're going to be really happy if you just had a great day. So trust me, I've been there. So I think they can serve a purpose if they can kind of, like I said, find that niche market, and especially with our communities. I think we need those kind of charter schools that do serve a purpose to making sure our kids are successful, even though they may have present with some challenges outside of the school system.
Well, but those are the type of non-traditional charter schools that I'm talking about. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every single charter school is a bad school or that, I just think that there needs to be more oversight and regulation. If they are going to exist, there needs to definitely be more oversight and regulation because, there are some bad ones. And, it's not every single one. It's just that, unfortunately, the whole group of them kind of get lumped together because
Right.
One bad apple spoils the bunch.
Exactly.
But the non-traditional charter schools are definitely a good thing. I dealt with kids that I've represented in the juvenile system and things like that. And a lot of times when they get to one of the alternative schools, they end up doing a lot better. And so I do agree with you in the sense that the non-traditional ones are good. It's just the regular K through 5 where there's really no special, it's just basically kind of like a private school that you don't pay for.
Right.
And those are the ones that I don't think, I don't think we need them. When we have schools that are being closed like Richmond Heights and things like that because there's low enrollment, when there are students that are in the neighborhoods that could actually go to, a school that's already in place, I think it's more fiscally responsible. And that's definitely something that we need to look at, when Florida is in the situation that it's in.
All right. 407-894-1680. 407-894-1680 is the number. Go ahead and give us a call if you want to ask candidate Rosalind Johnson. She is up for Florida House District 46. If you have any questions, 407-894-1680. All right. Yes, ma'am.
I have looking at your website, some of your priorities, and you can give that website too if you want.
Yes, the website is www.electrosforhouse.com. That's FOR house.com.
Okay. Under your issues, you say you're taking care of your veterans, and in your bio, you have a little bit of military experience.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
talk about a little bit about that, and then what you want to do for the veterans when you say taking care of your veterans?
I was in the military for a short time as a military police officer. I actually joined the military. I had my first child when I was 15. By the time I was 18, I had started college and I had my second child. But I was working 2 jobs, I was really struggling. And I joined the military thinking that, hey, I can make a better life for my kids. And I really enjoyed being in the military. But it kept me from being able to, go to school. The people that were there longer got, seniority and things like that. And so I knew that I wanted to go to law school. Mm-hmm. And so I spent about 2 years in the military, and then I got out and finished undergrad at Kansas State University. And I moved to Florida to go to Florida State for law school.
Seminole.
Yeah.
Seminole. So with that background, when you mean taking care of veterans, what are you expecting to do?
We need to make sure that healthcare is a big issue for everybody, not just veterans. But,
Right.
We need to make sure that our veterans have proper healthcare. We need to make sure they have proper mental health services. There are a lot of veterans who have, went over Afghanistan, Iraq, and they come out and they have things like PTSD and different things going on. A lot of them end up homeless. They end up maybe institutionalized. And so we just need to make sure that they have proper, services to help reintegrate them back into the workforce and back into, outside of the military life.
Right. Those are sad stories when you hear about them serving over for our freedoms and then come over here and they just can't get back into the routine of being a citizen. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, and they, a lot of people don't realize, they really sacrifice. I was married previously. We were both in the military at the time, and my ex-husband was gone, all the time. He was in Guantanamo Bay, Bosnia. And so they're away from their families. They're exposed to all kinds of things, mm-hmm. and they really sacrifice to make sure that, we can have our freedom.
Right.
Just like people sacrificing for the right to vote. And we need to make sure that, we are getting out there and exercising our right. August 14th, a lot of people don't realize that's a primary election. A lot of people don't come out to primaries, but that's where a lot of your local candidates are elected. Mm-hmm. In my race, for instance, there are 5 candidates in this race. There's no Republican. There are 5 Democrats running, which means it's a universal primary. And what that means is whoever wins this race on August 14th, whoever gets the most votes out of the 5 will be your next representative. It's not the top 2. It's not 51%. We will not go to November. And a lot of people don't realize that. So, they'll skip the August election and they go, vote for President Obama, which is wonderful. Go out and do that. We definitely need to do that.
Right.
Am I not supposed to endorse on?
Repeat that again. Did you
Make sure you go out November 6th and vote for President Obama.
Very good. Thank you, J.
But, it's very important. I believe also there's a couple of races that are universal primaries. I believe also the state attorney race is definitely one that will be decided in August. And so people need to realize that, people died for us to be able to go out and do this. I mean, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but, we'll stand in line for 2 days for some Nikes or to get in the club on Classic Weekend. So we need to go out there and vote. If you don't want to stand in line, request an absentee ballot, fill it out, mail it back in. Just make sure you put 3 stamps on it because otherwise it won't get there. But, we just need to make sure that we are doing what we need to do and what we're supposed to do. Because if you don't vote, you did vote. Right. You basically voted for the other person. So we definitely need to make sure that we're doing it, especially that, 18 to 35 range. We're the one, well, I'm a little over 35. But, we're the ones that aren't out there voting. I'm guilty of it myself. I didn't start voting until I was about 24 years old. I registered at 18, but, I had the mentality that, my vote doesn't count. None of that stuff trickles back down to me. And then, once I got more educated and started, looking at what was going on, I knew that I had to go out and do it. And so I think it's very important that, we teach our kids, from, back in the day, from way down, I hear, some of the older generation talking about how their mom and their grandma would take them to the polls with them when they went out to vote to make sure they knew how important it was. And I think we need to start instilling that kind of stuff into our kids as well.
I think today, we've become so, modernized, Americanized. I don't know the word you want to call it, but, everything is kind of given to us. And so we forget, what it took for us to get to where we are today. Some of these things just happened, in the last 50, 60 years. So there's people, still alive that can tell you, man, I couldn't vote when I was your age. Right. You know what I'm saying? So, we kind of forget that and kind of take these things for granted sometimes. And like you said, a lot of us have that apathy that, hey, what am I voting for? Nothing's happening. You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of people right now, especially a lot of black people are talking about, when it comes to the president, the president, we got a black president, and I'm still in the same situation. You know what I'm saying? Like what I'm voting for.
It took 8 years for Bush to get us in this situation. I know they didn't think he would get us out in 4. So, and I mean, you don't go out there and vote and, look at our governor. We gotta get out there and do something. I mean, because if Romney gets into office, all HE double hockey sticks is gonna break loose. See, I don't know if I can say that on the radio.
I like her. She talks good sense, unlike J. Real with this Romney now.
Yeah, right. I don't know if you listen to the show, Ms. Johnson, but I would not be voting for President Obama. But that's not what we're here for tonight. 407-894-1680, 407-894-1680. Again, we are talking with candidate Rosalind Johnson, Florida House District 46. I do have a couple questions I sent by text here. Do you have any particular ideas to kind of revitalize our neighborhoods?
It's going to come down to, first of all, neighborhood beautification. Getting with some of the homeowners associations and things like that in the area to make sure that, our neighborhoods are presentable. Just basic stuff like, making sure the lawns are taken care of, making sure that, around the walls were the names of the neighborhoods and, stuff like that. I mean, because, your neighborhood and your district needs to be attractive if you want to be able to bring in some of these new businesses. And so I think that's a big part of, the neighborhood revitalization and beautification.
Okay. All right. Speaking of bringing in business, what things do you think would help encourage businesses to kind of come? I know at some of the debates they talked a lot about a food desert, and for those that don't know, I'll give you an opportunity to explain what a food desert is. Well, the idea that they're talking about is where in certain areas there's no grocery store. And so as a result, the people, they can't go out and get fresh vegetables. It may be some of the stores that do sell groceries, maybe they're selling outdated groceries. So, they call them food deserts. But I don't really like the name either. That's what they refer to them as. But so I mean, what ideas could maybe you bring, or even bring from Tallahassee through some kind of joint effort, would encourage people to kind of go into these neighborhoods? I mean, because in my honest opinion, I think about some of, our neighborhoods, and I think about some of the grocery stores that you might be able to put there. You think of Publix, and, Winn-Dixie is kind of on the out, so is Albertson these days, but Publix is everywhere. So you think about a Publix, I just can't see a Publix coming into, one of our neighborhoods, because most people would probably say they're too expensive anyway. And so, they'd still never go. So what kind of ideas could be brought to kind of encourage, grocery stores or even other businesses to come into our neighborhoods? What could be done? Any ideas on that?
I think the first thing, like I said before, is making sure that we have an educated workforce. We need to make sure that we have people here that they can hire. Because we definitely don't want to bring businesses in and then have them bring employees with them or hire employees from outside the district. So that is the first thing, I think, is to make sure that, we're educating our workforce. As far as bringing Publix into the district specifically, I don't know if that's, that's not going to happen. That's going to happen. But, other types of businesses, even if it's, we have a lot of empty, retail outlets and things like that. I don't think necessarily grocery store, it would have to be something like that. Bringing in things like, Ross and Marshalls and different types of retail outlets. In Pine Hill specifically, you have a lot of, large retail, spaces that are empty. And I think, getting those types of shopping centers, things like we had, like Winter Garden Village, and how they have, on the east side, how they have Waterford Lakes, having something like that, centrally located here in West Orlando would definitely be something I think that could create jobs.
All right. And I see we have a caller. Susie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. You have a question? Go ahead.
Hi, Attorney Johnson. I was reading your bio, the card that you were passing out, and I see that you're a mother of 5, a wife, an attorney, and it says that you have a food pantry and a diaper pantry. I don't know if you mentioned anything about that the first 30 minutes. I missed it. Can you elaborate on your food pantry and your diaper pantry, and how often do you have them?
I have an organization in Washington Shores called Big Sis Incorporated. A lot of people get it confused with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and that's not what it is. It's actually an acronym which stands for Becoming Independent, Goal-Oriented, and Self-Sufficient in Society. The organization is for the empowerment and self-sufficiency of women. But in addition to the case management and things like that we do to help women, we have a food pantry, which is the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Currently, we service about 400 people a month, and it's steadily growing. The funny thing is, we open at 10, but people are in line at 6:45 in the morning.
Wow.
Waiting. And it's not the traditional food pantry with canned goods. We actually give out meat and, food that with some substance. And then I also have a diaper pantry. I don't have set days that I do that, but people can call in or come by if they're in need of diapers or formula. And the only qualification would be, they would need to bring, some type of proof, I guess, that they have a child. We're not really strict on that, because a lot of times when you get, bogged down with a lot of paperwork and stuff, people will shy away from receiving services. And so, it's kind of like on an honor system. But we do, provide diapers and formula to women if they need them. And the reason we do that is because a lot of people don't realize, things like WIC and stuff like that, you can't buy diapers. And, people are really struggling. And so, having the diaper pantry, when you can't buy diapers for your baby, you tend to keep the same diaper on them longer, which of course causes the child to have diaper rash, cause you have to go to doctor more, and things like that. And so that's one of the reasons why we started that, because there's a lot of stuff out here, traditional stuff. I'm getting kind of all off.
That's
all
right.
Off subject.
Go ahead and give her how would they get in contact with the Big Sis?
Big Sis. The website is www.bigsis.org. It's actually located in the Village Square, which is the old Wilcox Mall in Suite 216. And the phone number there is 407-610-9474. And if you look on our website, it gives you a lot of information about what we actually do. It gives you the dates and times, the days and times that we have the food pantry. And there's a lot of information about the programs and services that we offer.
Oh, okay, excellent. I'm so glad I now know you, because I was originally going to vote for Pam Powell just because I listened to WOKB on Sunday and I liked her spiel about going to the TOP. But now after being at the 26th Street at the debate and she didn't show up, I think you have my vote, and I thank you for all your excellence.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, so 407-894-1680, 407-894-1680 is the number. Like I said, candidate Rosalind Johnson, Florida House District 46. She is in the building taking your questions this evening. Speaking of your organization, clearly between campaigning, you have your foundation. You're obviously still an attorney. I'm assuming you're still at least watching cases. Maybe I don't know if you're taking them to court still, but I'm sure you're paying attention to what's going on. Tell me, what's been the biggest challenge or hurdle you found in pursuing this particular journey?
It's time management. It takes a lot of time management. It has been a little difficult for me because, I'm away from my little one, out campaigning, because I got to make sure that I'm out there shaking the hands and actually talking to the people. But I really enjoyed it. It's good to get out there and talk to people and hear what their concerns are. I've talked to, so many people who, that's why a big part of my platform is dealing with people who've been convicted of crimes, because that's a big issue. One young woman in particular that I've met with on more than one occasion, she's about 43 years old. She got convicted of a felony about 20 years ago. She has two kids. They're teenagers now, but she is sitting there telling me, and she's practically in tears, and she's like, I'm locked out. She said, I can't get a good job. I can't live in certain neighborhoods, all because of a mistake I made 20 years ago. She said, I've turned my life around. I'm doing the right thing. And, she said, when I was out there hustling and doing, stuff that I wasn't supposed to be doing, I had no problem paying my bills. And now that I'm doing the right thing, I'm really struggling. And she told me something that, I really liked, because the motto of my organization is helping women to help themselves. And, what she told me was, I just want somebody to help me help myself. And she said, I can't, do anything. She said, if I go and apply for a job, I go to an interview, that if I lie about, the conviction, I'll get the job, but then 2 weeks later they find out, they fire me. She says, I go in, I be honest about it, and I tell them, and she said, I hear the same old story. Oh, if it was up to me, I'd give you a job. And so, if you have a 43-year-old mother who sitting there telling me that, what, so many times I sit back and think, maybe I should go back to doing what I was doing so I can pay my bills. What do you think that 22, 24, 26-year-old young man is going to do? He's not going to think twice. He's going to go right back out there and do it. Right. And so I think it's very important that we, take care, especially, when you have people who just haven't been in trouble again. I mean, they made a mistake one time, long time ago, and they're really trying to get their life back together. And I think we just need to make sure that we take care of them, because, they say it's about a 45 to 60-day window, maybe 90 days before, when someone gets out of prison, before they'll actually recommit, a crime. And so if you get that person employed during that period of time, where they can actually take pride in their work and take care of their family, I think it'll have an impact on the crime rate as well. It makes our neighborhood safer, because when somebody's working and can take care of their family, they aren't out robbing and stealing you. Mm-hmm. I mean, stealing and robbing. What am I saying? I can't even get it out right. But you understand what I'm trying to say.
If they're working, they don't have time to take from you.
Exactly. Right. I mean, they don't want to, because they can take pride in being able to take care of that family, and that's why that's a big part of my platform is making sure that we take care of the people who are trying to do the right thing.
What can be done in order to help that situation?
Well, I think the first thing is to look at that statute and look at the process and try to streamline that. Florida is one of, I think there's about 47 states where it's pretty quick where you can go and get your rights restored or get records sealed. Florida makes that process very, very difficult, and Governor Scott has added extra things kind of on top of that. And I don't understand the reasoning for it other than probably voter suppression. But that I think that looking at those statutes and trying to do something with that legislation to make that process a little easier. Okay.
All right. We're kind of winding down here. I wanted to what's going to distinguish you from the rest of the field of five, as far as what makes you special? Why do the constituents want to vote for Rosalind Johnson?
Well, because I take this personally. I think that, I am representative of the people in this district. Even though I'm an attorney, I've been through a whole lot growing up. I've struggled. I had a child at a young age, so, I can relate to that, that young mother who's trying to go to school and trying to better herself. I can relate to that business owner who's trying to, make that payroll every week and keep their doors open. I'm kind of, I am District 46. I am the people that are in this district. And I think what makes me stand out from the other candidates, first of all, I'm the only one in the race with the level of education, the highest, the level of education to be able to actually do the job. A lot of people don't know what the actual job entails. How you have to analyze bills, you have to be able to understand that stuff when you read it. And I think, me being an attorney definitely cuts the learning curve on that. I know one of my opponents says, experience counts. But, you don't, everybody has been in the legislature for the first, every legislature up there was there for the first time at one point. But I think that, having that legal background definitely gives me the upper hand on the other candidates. And also the fact that I am already involved in the community. I didn't wait until an election to get out there and start doing something.
Definitely. That sounds really good. Again, 407-894-1680. We only have a few minutes, but if you want to get a call in here, 407-894-1680 is the number. Something I wanted to kind of bring up with you, and I mentioned it prior to us coming on the air. I've been, doing some reading. Of course, every year the Orlando Sentinel puts out whom they believe is the best candidate, if you will. And this year they picked one of your opponents, Jason Henry, and their sole purpose, or at least the thing that they outlined, was due to the fact that he seemed to be aware of specific bills that might be able to, help take advantage. He could take advantage of, I should say, to maybe help revitalize things in the community. So that basically suggesting he was better knowledgeable about what was actually going on currently in Tallahassee, even prior to going up there, which somehow makes him more qualified. You have any comments on the Orlando Sentinel's opinion?
First of all, I would say that it is just an opinion. Secondly, anybody can memorize a bunch of House bill numbers and, spew them, regurgitate them back out. I actually went and researched those bills after he brought them up, and the way he actually interpreted them was not the way that it was actually supposed to be. So he interpreted it improperly, which I think is, like I said, me having that legal background gives me the upper hand. But like I said, anybody can memorize some stuff and, memorize House bill numbers and spit them back out. What he should have been looking at was petition numbers, considering you've been in the race longer than anybody else, but you only got 66 petition signs and I got 546 in 4 days, which lets you know who's actually out there talking to the people in the community, because you have to be talking to them to get the signatures, right?
You do have to talk to them to get signatures. We have another caller here, Maybelle. How you doing tonight, Maybelle?
Fine. I was calling because
My grandson was incarcerated, and it's hard for him to get a job. He's been looking and looking.
Okay. And
So
you,
where should he, is there anywhere special he should go to find out about if you've been incarcerated? Are there any special companies that will hire him?
so you're wondering I guess you're asking the candidate if she knows any particular places that felons can go to maybe that might help them with employment. It sounds like what she's asking. I don't know if you know that information off the top of your head.
Are you asking about employment or about getting the record sealed or expunged or?
No, he doesn't need a record. I don't know if he needs a record expunged or not, but it's just hard for him to go out there seeking employment if he's been incarcerated. And he has good job skills.
All right. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're trying to find out if the candidate knows any employment places or any places that help felons, I suppose, find jobs. I don't know that that's something that you'd know off the top of your head.
I know the Urban League has a program, but I don't know of any other programs within the area.
All right. So there you go. Maybe start with the Urban League, Maybell there, and send him down to the Urban League, and maybe they can either they can help him or perhaps they might be able to recommend him. I don't personally know nothing off the top of my head, but maybe start there and kind of see where we go, I suppose. So again, we're winding down here. I'll give you real quick one last word you want to leave with the people tonight, Ms. Johnson.
I'll just leave it very simple. Past performance is the best indicator of future performance. If you want to know what your next representative, what the candidate is going to do when they get in office, look at what they've been doing previously. And I'll leave it with that. All right.
And go ahead and give them your information. So if they want to contact you, see what you're about, how can they find you?
On the website, it's www.electrozforhouse.com. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/RozForHouse. You can contact me through either of those avenues. Also, my email address is info@rozforhouse.com.
All right, so there it is. electrozforhouse.com for Rosalind Johnson, Florida House candidate, District 46. We want to thank you for stopping by. We really do appreciate that.
Thank you.
I hope everybody out there has got a good idea of who candidate Rosalind Johnson is here. I guess some other people were on the show, I guess, or at least on the station earlier. So now you've heard from someone else as well. Hopefully you have a better informed idea. Speaking of one of those other candidates, I was on Facebook the other day. And, I spoke about this before about Easter suits, but I was on Facebook the other day, and she has a new campaign out. And we're talking about Pam Powell for those that are confused. She has a new campaign out talking about helping with health. And in the campaign photo, it's her. She has on a nurse's outfit. She has on what appears to be, in her hand, I should say, she has what appears to be some kind of syringe. And I wish I could think of the slogan right now. But I just remember seeing the ad and just thinking, really? So this is what she's up against. Go out, check out everybody, just to give you an idea. It's Rosalind Johnson. That's who you've been listening to all night here. And some of her other candidates, Jason Henry, Bruce Antone, Pam Powell, and Sean Bradford. But Rosalind has been here for you tonight. And that is a good thing.
Thank you, Rosalind. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay. In response to Maybell's question, I guess someone called in. So if you're still listening there, Maybell, apparently Walmart, Popeyes, Golden Corral all hire felons. So if he hasn't tried any of those places, he might go try those there, Maybell. Guys, Miss McCray, you got any final comments you want to make tonight?
Not at all.
Not at all?
Have a wonderful week, everybody.
Have a wonderful week. One more thing. Recently, Chick-fil-A's been under a lot of fire because one of their presidents talked about not supporting gay marriage. And of course, the lesbians, homosexual, LGBT, I think it's called. They're all up in an uproar because he said that, because apparently you can't tell the truth anymore. But tomorrow, if you are interested, there's a big kind of support within the Christian community, I guess they're calling it. And everybody's making sure to go out and buy something from Chick-fil-A just to show that, one, I think they definitely have a right to speak whatever they want. Companies do not have to endorse gay marriage. It's not necessary. And then two, to show that Christians have a right, which is, one of the things about Chick-fil-A. They're closed on Sunday. Why? Because they want their employees, if they want to go to church, they want them to be able to go to church and not have to worry about coming in at 5 o'clock. To, serve some people some chicken sandwiches and some waffle fries. But, so tomorrow, like I said, there's a big rally going on to support Chick-fil-A and their stance on gay marriage. And so a lot of people are kind of going out, buying some Chick-fil-A tomorrow. I think I will be buying some Chick-fil-A tomorrow. I think they definitely have a right to do it.
I definitely will buy some Chick-fil-A also.
Definitely. Because, one of the things that happened, they were talking about, Chick-fil-A needs to be shut down because he made this statement, ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Out of control. Everybody does not need to support gay marriage simply because, yes, the president does. I was reading today, it's going to be a big issue at the Democratic convention when they have that as well.
Obama supports gay marriage?
Obama supports gay marriage. That's correct.
Remember that?
He's so perfect. I didn't know.
Right. The president, just because the president supports gay marriage, and like I said, the Democratic convention is going to apparently have a big platform about the Democratic Party's support of gay marriage as well. But that does not take away the right of individuals, of companies, to be able to believe and think what they believe and stay true to themselves. Again, we thank candidate Rosalind Johnson for joining us tonight. We thank the family out there for joining us as well. You can find us on Facebook, Real Family Talk. You'll find us on Twitter, Real Family Talk. All of the shows are up on YouTube. The channel, of course, is Real Family Talk. You can check out the website for different blogs that have been written and find out all about the people who share with me on Real Family Talk at realfamilytalk.weebly.com. We will see you next week, same time, 9 p.m. Tuesday night.
WOKB, Winter Garden, Orlando.
Made my life worth living. You taught me the joy of giving. It was all along. Open doors I could not see. You gave me victory. Said I give you all the glory, all the praises too. Ain't no doubt about it. I know. Said that it belongs to you. I said, yeah.